And what is up? Welcome in GC Live Friday episode, part 2, live from Steel Hands. Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell. We're going to talk about everything we didn't talk about earlier, Chris, and try to convince everybody to come out, have a brew with you, come watch Chris perform on stage. And we got Michael Haney out here, our buddy from former 107.5 host Michael Haney. Gamecock Bourbon Society is here. We've got a giveaway as well. If you come out here, $500 value, a logo cooler bag, Steel Hands tap handle, a $30 gift card, a 64-ounce glass logo growler, a logo hat, 2 logo shirts, 1 free year to Gamecock Central, and some stuff from Gamecock Bourbon Society. We got all I mean, we're going to spend the whole hour just listing the amount of things that are on this giveaway today. But you have to be here to win. So come on out. We are at Steel Hands in Casey. Got a beautiful banner behind us as well. Chris, let's pick up where we left off earlier, I guess. I do want to talk some recruiting as well. Gamecock Central subscribers have already seen the list. Hopefully, if you have not, go to GamecockCentral.com and check that out. But, we talked to Austin Price a little bit earlier from VolQuest. We had a couple technical difficulties there, but we did get his vibe on this game. A lot of it, man, kind of what I expected, kind of what I thought. I know he covers this program very, very closely. But a Tennessee team that comes in, I would say, with relatively few weaknesses, man. Yeah. Is that safe to say?
No, very safe.
And Chris, a offense that I feel like probably whatever weaknesses they do have, this offense kind of covers those weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the Tennessee defense, I think, I said this earlier today, a group that I think is better than some of the statistics bear out. You pointed out that, sure, they've given up some yards, but in terms of scoring defense, they've been pretty good. Think back to one of their performances, Wes, LSU in Baton Rouge, 40-13, holding the Tigers 13 points. A pretty good group, right, which is not exactly a great projection against a Gamecock offense that struggled to score, right? Then on the other side, the fact that their offense is so explosive, they can really do it all. Like, there's not any weaknesses with this Tennessee offense for sure. Defensively, they're good. Special teams are pretty solid. Austin Price pointed out that he thinks South Carolina will, in order to have a chance to be in this one and be competitive, make some special teams play, which they've done throughout the year, and create some turnovers. But offensively, man, this Vols team, they have a great quarterback who can make all the throws. He's super efficient, just two interceptions all year. They have speed. They have size and one-on-one ability. They can get really easy yardage with just how their offense is structured. And here's the thing that people forget, they can really run the football, and that makes it so tough with how they spread you out especially.
So you basically just described, like, everybody's perfect. When coaches talk about football and the goals they have,
yes,
the things they want to be as a team, you just described all of those things, and that's what Tennessee does successfully, does well.
We want to stretch the field vertically and horizontally. I mean, nobody stretches it horizontally more than Tennessee does, just with how they
– and I love it, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, just how they do their splits with their receivers. They're way out there, right? They can throw a little receiver screen, and we saw that last year in the South Carolina game, man. South Carolina really struggled with that. Just the easy money throws that get you 8 yards or 15 yards if you break one tackle. But then they bring Alex Golesh, their OC, join forces with Josh Heupel after being at Iowa State. What do you think of when you think of Iowa State? Smash mouth, tough football. So they bring both of those elements together. So they have the physical run game, they have the finesse, and then they have the vertical and horizontal stretch that, just like you said, it's every coach's kind of dream of what they say they're going to do. They actually do it.
Yeah, they do, man. And I think, I was trying. So I was kind of diving into the stats a little bit this afternoon. I was trying to find some reasons for hope for South Carolina fans in this one, Chris. I didn't find much, to be honest. They've given up quite a bit of yardage through the air, which is, if there's a weakness, that is it. Like, they've given up some yards through the air. However, teams have thrown the ball an average of almost 41 times per game against Tennessee. So, yes, they've given up some yardage through the air. However, it seems pretty clear to me that's because teams are chasing them. Like, that's because
Rally mode.
Yeah, they are in rally mode,
No
trying to either chase them or, in a lot of cases, probably just trying to keep pace early on,
Yep.
feeling like they have to go score, maybe getting a little impatient. But the other side of that, I said, Tennessee, and you see this a lot. That's why the traditional stats don't always tell the full story. They're rushing defense numbers, right? I said, well, they haven't given up a lot of yards per game. Maybe some of that is because the opposite of what we're saying, right? That teams have abandoned the run.
Yep.
However, they allow 3.16 yards per carry defensively, which is good for third in the SEC. So there's not a lot of running room when these guys are out there. So, just maybe you can find a way to throw the ball on them a little bit, but the numbers don't really bear that out. If this, let me put it like this. If this was a great South Carolina passing attack, we may have a different story. We may be saying, if there's a weakness, maybe you can throw it on them. But I feel like Carolina has had to prove they can run the ball in games to keep a little bit of that heat off of Rattler, slow down the pass rush of their opponents in order to have success throwing the ball. Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards, especially with no Marcus Lattimore, no CBS.
Yeah.
Or Marshawn Lloyd. We were just talking about Marcus Lattimore.
We had a long conversation about Marcus.
Yes. No Marshawn Lloyd. No Marcus.
It would be good to have Marcus Lattimore, yes. No doubt. But, man, and that's why it goes back to, like, you talk about some of, like, the things that you could do, the coulds and the keys and all these types of things. And South Carolina just seems so, like, ill-equipped to deal with those things, to be able to do it. And so I think all that you just said, great points. But that leads you to the conclusion that, well, what do you have to do to be competitive with Tennessee, and what does South Carolina have to do to be competitive in general? And that is establish the run. Well, no Lloyd, no CBS. Two of the two worst offensive performances of the season, both within the span of 3 weeks, sandwiched with the Vandy game in between. That doesn't exactly inspire a ton of confidence, that they can do that. But nonetheless, they do have to find a way to do that. It is not sustainable for – even if they put up, Wes, a passing attack like we saw in the Arkansas game, 377 yards, you end up scoring 30 points. That's not good enough because a lot of that came in that rally mode, and that came in a game in which South Carolina could not stop the opposing team, right, defensively. So I think Shane Beamer talked about it a lot. I mean, he talked about tackling and some other keys to the game, but there's no doubt that you have to find a way for your offense to be able to move the chains and stay on the field, even if you're not necessarily coming away with points on the drive. I mean, they have to come away with points a lot more than they typically have, especially lately. Yeah. But you have to find a way to be able to – you don't want to give Tennessee a 40-yard field or a 60-yard field. You have to make them go 80. They're more than capable of doing that, right? But you want to be able to at least move the ball and keep their explosive offense off the field. And so therein lies the challenge.
Well, and they're going to be relentless. Like, they're going to run to the line of scrimmage. They're going to line up. They do – Clayton White talked about this week, man. They do tempo really about as well as anybody out there because a lot of teams really don't major in tempo anymore. Like, they give you tempo at times. These guys are completely comfortable just it's going into tempo all the time, I feel like. And here's the thing, they are successful offensively anyway.
Yeah.
So then they use it to their advantage. We've seen over the years, since tempo was a trend, I guess, I don't know, man, that's maybe been a decade almost now. Yeah. But when tempo became a trend, we saw teams try to copy it, try to emulate it. And what happens? If you're not very good offensively and you go tempo, you go quickly punt. But
not good.
This team doesn't really do a whole lot of punting at all. And then when they do have to bring their special teams on their field, to your point earlier, they've been a pretty efficient special teams unit as well. So can Carolina, can this group find that special team advantage that they have found really almost all season, not in every game, but a lot of games this year, that's a tough task as well. I feel like, and, I'll be completely frank and honest with you all. Like, we've been talking about this game quite literally all day long.
Mhm.
We have had very little positive to say from a South Carolina perspective, but that is just kind of the reality of this game. I'm going to bring up a point that was made by Gamecock Ryan. Gamecock Ryan always hanging out with us. We'll take a near flawless Carolina performance. What a win it would be. Absolutely. If they, this would be one of the best wins, actually, I would dare say, in school history if Carolina were to pull it off. But they are going to have to play near flawless just to have a chance. And then they're going to need Tennessee to help as well.
Yeah, I mean, what's the FPI on this game? Have you looked it up lately?
I haven't looked it up lately. I know when we looked last week, it was like 90.
90. Okay.
Excuse me.
I almost feel like maybe even a little, it might have crept up a little bit. I was just curious. I mean, because I started thinking of it in terms of what we talk about a lot, which is like how many times out of 10 would a team win. I almost feel like in this one, Wes, again, not trying to be negative, just like the reality of analyzing the game, like you might even have to expand the number to like 15, the 1 in 15 or something, just because there's, we talk a lot about overall talent differentials and different things, and scheme matchups, and then what you always talk about with just how does a team match up against a team.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a better chance of springing an upset because maybe you match up a little bit better against the team. This, not really a good matchup in any way for South Carolina, even if Tennessee was just a good team. The problem is they're not a good team.
Yeah.
They're a great potentially, or I mean, maybe even just they're definitely an excellent team, maybe even a great team.
Yeah, they're a really good team. I think, Chris, I don't know, man. Like, you can, no matter how you frame it, no matter how you frame this thing, it's a tough road for Carolina. And I do think we're talking about a lot of ifs here. If Carolina was playing very well on one side or the other, offense or defense, and then your opponent has an off game, it maybe evens out, and you get in one of those games where you kind of know the lesser team is hanging around, you give yourself a chance, right?
Yeah.
I think we've talked about complimentary football a ton, but like last week, again, opposite of complimentary football. So I don't know where you find that advantage. Like, if you have a great defense but your offense struggles, your defense can keep you in games. Likewise, if you have an offense that just keeps the pressure on opponents, you can kind of get away with having some defensive struggles. The way Carolina has played the last few weeks on either side, honestly, frankly, even Missouri, they didn't give up a ton of points, but that was a Missouri offense that came in not doing much.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the path is, y'all. And I was going to try to look up the FPI real quick here and tell you what it says now, but the path is definitely a very, very narrow one where just about everything has to go Carolina's way. And I think it starts, though, with finding a way to play a clean game. Like we've seen the last couple of weeks, Chris, the penalties, like that has not been something this team has dealt with as an issue at all. Last couple of weeks, against Florida, not that they did a whole lot offensively anyway, but they had some stuff wiped out by penalties. Man, they had a 3rd and 1 that ended up being a 3rd and 6. They ended up converting it anyway, but you're just like, man, you don't get away with that often. Yeah. That's like the football gods punish you when you turn 3rd and 1s or 4th and 1s into longer yardage situations. And it's going to have to be just a lot cleaner. We talk about turnovers all the time. Got to win a turnover. All the cliched things, they're going to need to go their way.
All of them, yeah. You look back at a couple of Tennessee's closer games this year. So they obviously have the one loss to Georgia. The problem is, you look at the Georgia game and like the blueprint that they established, that's not one that teams can copy.
Yeah.
Really, because Georgia, you said some version of this earlier, Georgia can just say, go ahead and do what you do. we'll do what we do, and our guys are good enough to where we can beat you.
Yep.
We can out physical you, we can outspeed you, and we're going to do a really good job with our scheme and our coaching. And so you look at the Tennessee Georgia game. I think Georgia had 6 sacks in that game, had a bunch of pressures. They forced some turnovers. You look at Tennessee's game with Pitt, overtime win, 34-27. That game was super even throughout, which it was so weird. First downs, time of possession, score at the end of regulation. I mean, all of it was super even. Turnover margin was even, right? So I think Tennessee, they don't turn the football over a lot. Hendon Hooker, 2 interceptions. So that's something you've got to find a way. Like, that's one of the things that we say that often, like stop the run, turnover margin, affect the quarterback. If South Carolina can't affect Hendon Hooker in some way at quarterback, which is something that in spurts they've done. They haven't been doing it lately. They've done it in spurts. That's something that they've got to get back to. I think is one of the keys to this game is finding a way to affect him.
You know what Carolina needs? Since we're sitting here at Steel Hands, they need for the game tomorrow to be drunk. Like they need to be this. You watch a game, especially if you watch enough football, you just watch whatever's on. You'll run into a game, it's not even your team playing, and you'll just be like, what am I watching? Like, the ball is bouncing weird. It sort of just breaks the game, like you're just like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
They need a game like that where every bounce goes your way. The game last week, South Carolina was thoroughly outplayed. So I'm not saying they weren't by any means, but even the little, like Florida drops a couple of balls, they had a couple of fumbles, they go right back into their hands. Even the things that you just hope, if you're a Carolina fan, you just hope for a little luck on, the luck didn't go your way either.
2019 Georgia, you were talking about that game earlier. Now, you did a great job in that game with certain things, but you still had Rodrigo Blankenship missing field goals. Doesn't happen.
Which he does not do.
You had what was it, the fourth down play that Carolina got that they really, even if you go back and watch that play, they should not have gotten it. And somehow Rico Dowdle squirts through there. There were a lot of things like that. And so, different types of teams, different seasons, obviously. But similar to that, just a weird game where Tennessee has not played a night game on the road. Is that something?
Ever?
This season.
Is
that something? Does that count for anything?
Well, I know this. Say what you want about Gamecock Nation, but there ain't much that they do better than getting ready for a night game at Willie B.
Yeah. So
the Steel Hands will be flowing tomorrow. The fans will be there. The lights will be flashing.
Yep.
Gamecock Nation will be ready. You got to find a way to keep them in the game, right? Like, you got to find a way to start. Do you fake something early on? Could you get another Texas A&M style start? You got to have something where everybody has a reason to, at the end of the first quarter, still be looking at their buddy, being like, all right, we're hanging in there. I think, man, it's going to be cold. So dress in layers tomorrow. If your mama didn't tell you that, I'm going to tell you that. It's definitely going to be – we're out here right now. It's already kind of chilly. Dress in layers. It's going to be chilly. You got to give these fans a reason to want to stay in the seats, a reason to want to keep yelling. That stadium, these fans can affect the game, but Carolina has to play well enough in the first place to give them a reason to cheer, I feel like. And then maybe it affects the opponent.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Tennessee, I gotta imagine, Chris, they're like a one-word offensive call unit, right?
That's what I was gonna say. I think that's yet another thing where we're gonna turn.
Sorry,
it negative.
guys.
Sorry, but you're right.
Right?
I was just thinking about that because here's the thing. Play one of a drive. Tennessee throws a little, screen out there. They get 6 yards, which is a pretty good result, honestly, for the defense at times. They might be running up to the line, and before anybody in the stadium can even react, they've snapped the ball again. Yeah. Austin Price from VolQuest said, did you hear that? If you're watching the game live in the stadium from the press box or stands wherever, there's the TV delay. He said if you have the TV copy on and you're sitting there watching live, they might be 3 plays behind on
Yeah.
TV because they're going so fast. So
Yeah.
that does take it out. If you're Texas A&M, for example, with 8 false starts,
God, they
you're
struggle.
sitting there and Jimbo's rifling through his, trapper
His
keeper or
knowledge,
whatever, and trying to figure out the play, and then you're sitting there for 10 seconds as an O lineman and you're false starting. They don't do that. And so that's why Shane Beamer talked about everybody doing their part. The fans will be in it, but the team, there's going to be even more on them for this one.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Gamecock bourbon being drank before and after this game, potentially. But, yeah, I mean, I think maybe it seems like if you get an opponent in 3rd and longs, if Carolina's in the game, you see the offensive tackle kind of almost trying to time the snap himself and get like a head start. And, you can still pull some false starts. But I think the communication aspect kind of gets wiped out a little bit as long as they can hear that one word that they're going to be throwing out there. By the way, you talked about their offense earlier and their coaches. Who calls their offense?
Alex Golesh, their OC, from my understanding, calls their plays and has been really, I had somebody tell me that covers Tennessee, really familiar, yeah, Heupel's good, his offense is good, but, he's the guy that's taking it to the next level because of bringing, again, going back to meshing the Iowa State, we're going to smack you right in the mouth run game. You mix those two things, if you can do it well, it makes it really tough. So, yeah, apparently Golesh calls their plays. Their quarterback's coach, Joey Housley, I think is how you pronounce it, is supposedly really good too and a potentially a rising star.
They got a whole team of offensive guys, it seems like. But, man, I don't think it sort of connected with me until earlier when you're talking about how bad they beat LSU.
Yeah.
This is an LSU team that, is going to play for the West.
Yeah.
They're going to represent the West in the title game. They have beat the heck out of Ole Miss.
Yep.
They beat Alabama.
Yep.
And they are the West's best team by the records.
Yeah.
And Tennessee smashed them.
Yeah. 4 scores.
That's an impressive.
In Baton Rouge. During the day, but
still, that's something. I don't know what it is, but that is something.
Impressive, yeah.
Yeah, and man, no, very few teams in the land right now are going to be able to copy what Georgia did. I think Georgia has the guys to eliminate what Tennessee's whole philosophy is, and that is they're going to spread your way out. They have good athletes. They have a quarterback who understands where the ball should go. And then I know all coaches talk about getting guys in space. But because of the way Tennessee operates, they get guys in space. Most of the time, their guy in space against their opponent's guy in space, they like their chances.
Yeah.
I think Georgia and, Gary Danielson, I thought, did a great job of sort of putting this up on the screen. He's like, I was trying to see what Georgia was doing to stop them. And the answer was nothing. They were just being Georgia. They didn't do anything particularly special. It was just when they were in space, their guys are athletic enough and big enough to make the tackles. Then when Tennessee tried to run the football, that power element that was there against most teams, Georgia is one of the best in the country at stopping the run, obviously, getting off blocks, defeating blocks. That's something, watching back the Florida game, and guys, I did rewatch it. I took one for the team for you all. I did rewatch it. Carolina just has not lately been able to get off blocks. It's like they're stuck inside and outside on the perimeter. You look at those runs where it just looks super easy. It's when Florida or even Vanderbilt is taking the ball to the outside. You need to at least be able to force a hold. You know what I mean? To where the offensive lineman kind of has to hold on to you and it turns you and you get that holding call. Carolina, it's almost like they're sticky or something. I don't know what it is. They're not able to get off blocks right now. And against Tennessee, dude, this is a group that will crush you if you don't get off blocks. So I think we talked about it earlier, man. This is like a pride game for Carolina. You got to sort of look at that guy across from you and say, not today. I'm not getting dominated today. sometimes that stuff gets overblown, I think, Chris, and it's easy to sit at home, sit on a podcast, sit on a message board and be like, you got to want it more.
Right.
That guy across from you is really good. But this is absolutely a pride game for South Carolina.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and great points about the run game. Two things. 1 point about the run game, 1 point about what Georgia did, so that I'll actually remember them in that order. So, run game, inside, South Carolina is misfitting the run a lot.
Yes.
We've seen that a ton. Outside, they're not setting the edge. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And, you know, we talked about it a lot, you and I did, right after the Vandy game. We talked about it on here. You know, when you're getting gashed by a Vandy team, you know, in the run game, that's not good. You know, they got masked maybe a little bit because they didn't score as many points as they could have. They, you know, some of their drives ended up sputtering out, and South Carolina was able to score enough points to where they were able to, you know, come away with a fairly comfortable win. But nonetheless, big concern. And then when you look at how Tennessee is going to do it and how fast they're going to go, if you're misfitting the run in normal situations, you can misfit it even faster against Tennessee and even more egregiously. What Georgia did, watching that game live, you're right. I mean, and Danielson's right. Just line up, say this is what we're going to do. Georgia didn't let Tennessee have the easy money stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's why Shane Beamer's talking so much about tackling.
Yeah.
You got to be able to tackle out on the edges, on the perimeter. This is going to sound weird. Make them throw the ball deep.
Yeah. Oh,
If they beat you over the top, okay, you can actually live with that. If Jalen Hyatt burns your nickel for 50 yards, you know, nobody's happy, but okay.
Yeah.
You can't live with a missed tackle on a tunnel screen and now it's 60 yards. You can't do that. So Georgia did that a lot. They forced their guys, hey, we're going to get in your face. We're going to play man coverage. And Hendon Hooker missed some throws. He missed some throws, not by a lot.
Yeah, barely.
But he missed them, and that's the difference in a game like that.
So put your face in the fan? Is that what you're saying?
Well, absolutely. You got to. Yeah.
Up front, got to, and on the outside. Speaking of, if you're Carolina, I have two questions for you. If you're Carolina, is DQ Smith playing nickel today or tomorrow, I should say? Or are you going back to what we saw a lot of early in the year? Is Cam Smith in what in all likelihood will be his last game at Williams-Brice Stadium? Is he playing nickel? And you already know the reason I'm bringing that up, but the reason being all this talk about Jalen Hyatt versus Cam Smith, Jalen lines up in the slot by my eyes a ton, by PFF even more than that. Almost every single snap he's taken this year is in the slot.
Yeah.
So DQ brings a little bit of extra size to that nickel spot. Again, they're going to run the football on you too. But are you tempted to go back to Cam inside? But if you do that, what does that open you up to on the outside? It's not like they're just Jalen Hyatt. Yeah. They have other good receivers as well. What's your game plan? Or a little of both?
Yeah, maybe a little both. I mean, and one thing we have seen, and I don't want this to sound like yet another negative on the show, here's teams have gone after nickel freshman DQ Smith. He's a really good player. He's going to be, I think he's going to be an NFL player. He's a freshman.
Yep.
And when he got to South Carolina, he had not played defensive back since 8th grade. So not only does he get here, not as an early enrollee, Wes, but he gets here in the summer, right? He goes through preseason with the team as a freshman. He plays safety and after a few games moves to nickel. So that's a lot for a guy to handle, and he's done a great job with it. But there have been some times where teams have gone after him a little bit in coverage because that's the area that, was the most unnatural for him and the biggest learning curve. So given that, and I'm not saying this will happen, to answer your question, just like putting on the coaching hat, I would have a temptation to say, okay, let's play dial and rush at corner. Let's play Cam, and let's move DQ and play him at safety, especially because beside Nikeem and Worry, you've been banged up.
Yeah.
Spalding's out. Reed's been banged up. Gibson's been banged up.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to make that move that you're talking about. Just me.
Well, and by the way, I wanted to mention this because I wanted to make sure that I read this right. This has been a long day, y'all. Since it is fitting to what we're talking about. But did you see this earlier?
I did, man. Big news in the Midlands.
So I want to just, I guess, shout out Robin Bacon. Great dude.
Guy.
Great coach. All the above. I think, Chris, you know him a little better than I do, but I've talked to him before, and just has always been very, very helpful in everything on the media side, and his players seem to love him. But earlier today, Coach Robin Bacon from Spring Valley stepping down. So one of, I would say easily, one of the Midland's best, man.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Robin Bacon he's a great human being. He is one of the best networkers I've ever seen. He does a great job with college coaches. Any college coach, whether it's Alabama or Limestone, he's going to shout them out for coming into school, recruiting his players. He does a great job of advocating for his kids. He was a big DQ Smith fan.
Yeah.
He's had some really good players there.
He called that one right.
He called it right. So, great guy. He did a really good job at Spring Valley. So, best of luck to him with whatever he's doing next. Haven't gotten to talk to him yet. Glad you reminded me of that. I got to send him a message.
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter earlier, and I think I was about to get in the car, and then it slipped my mind. Then when we were talking about DQ, I was like, this is a perfect time to mention this. Also, before I forget, I want to tell you all about our good friends at Liberty Tax right here in Columbia. Actually, throughout Columbia. They have a spot in Lexington, a spot in Irmo, and a spot in actual Columbia. 803-462-5576. Shout out to our friends there. We're going to be telling you more about them in the coming months as tax season is actually right around the corner, and you're going to want to give our friends at Liberty Tax a call. So 803-462-5576. We tell you every single show. We just want to remind you, and again, we'll be telling you more and more about them later on. My second question, I said I had two questions. Are you feeding the ball to DeCarrion Joyner a bit more this week? Because the only word that keeps coming to my mind, man, is manufacture. They've got to manufacture some running game success. And I know a lot of people are down on the Jaheim Bell playing running back situation. Yeah. I'll be honest. I still think that's maybe their best option right now at running back. There was, Chris, very little room to operate last week. Matter of fact, he had a cut and run the same 3rd and 6 I was talking about earlier, where it was 3rd and 1. They had a false start. They got into 3rd and 6, and they ran the football. He had a beautiful cut on that one where he cut the ball to the outside, sort of fell forward. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if they were setting up the fake punt on that play as well, running the ball on that 3rd and 6. But anyway, here nor there. I'm not done with the whole Jaheim Bell thing. I think they're going to have to keep doing that because your best option, honestly. However, there's been a lot of talk. Do you see Rashad Amos? Do you see Dante Miller? Do you see Lavassier Carroll? I thought you and I were texting about this, man. So not to steal your thunder, but DeCarrion looked explosive last week. He's been good this year when he's been in there at quarterback. Do you expand that package a little bit as far as what you call this week?
I would. Why not? I mean, I think that gives you, pass protection has been an issue. And I'm not saying Spencer Rattler doesn't take or shouldn't take the majority of the snaps in the game. I think you could see that. But even look, last week there was a stretch where I think DeCarrion had 2 successful plays in a row, and then he's back on the bench. Maybe you ride that this time if you can find it. We were texting during the Florida game, and I thought DeCarrion looked like he had – we know he's been banged up some, right?
Yeah.
Like when he's been playing. I feel like he had a little bit of an extra gear. And so this is a game where – I mean, it's kind of a kitchen sink game. Like you just empty the chamber. And so I don't see any problem with doing it. I think, whether it's that, Bell, finding some ways with your receivers, extension of the run game or some reverses. My prediction, Wes, in our prediction piece on Gamecock Central – is that we see a trick play at some point on offense, not special teams, because I think they've just got to manufacture. Go back to that word that you mentioned.
Yeah. Let's see a lot of trick plays. I feel like the fan base right now is at a point where if you just went out there and called double reverse flea flicker, you know what I'm saying? Just like let this thing all hang
He'll
out,
be like, all right.
they'd be like, well, they're
It doesn't
trying.
work. Nah, they're trying. Yeah.
Yeah, so be it. It's a great way to get run straight out of the building if it doesn't work. But nobody ever thinks about that when they're like, just throw every play at them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at this point, what do you have to lose? It would be entertaining if nothing else. I think, Chris. All right, we teased a little bit of recruiting talk earlier. Pretty nice list, honestly.
Nice list.
Final home game for South Carolina this year. So last opportunity to get recruits in for a game. And the list is pretty strong, man. Let's start with official visitors. You can go to GamecockCentral.com if you want to read the full list. But, Chris, a couple of very intriguing, uncommitted guys on official visits this weekend.
One is on the O-line, Keyshawn Blackstock, who is a Newton High in Covington, Georgia native, now at Coffeyville Community College in Kansas, has blown up, man. 6'5", 300, has a big offer list. A lot of the typical, usual suspects in the Southeast, Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, all those different schools are after him. South Carolina got in kind of early and, offered in November this month, but kind of laid some groundwork there. So they'll get him in on his official visit. And another one that's also interesting, I had an eye on this one to see if it would materialize, from South Florida, Edwin Joseph, who is a guy capable of probably playing receiver or defensive back. Also has some nice offers. The in-state schools, FSU is a big player for him. Miami's in the picture for him. Talented athlete out of Chaminade Madonna High School. He'll be on campus for an official as well.
Is he a dude?
I think he's a dude. I think he's a potential dude.
Potential dude.
Yeah.
Elijah Davis isn't on the expected list again. This will be an unofficial. He's already taken his official. That's a guy, Chris, I think we both felt pretty good about, actually really good about coming out of that official. If you're Carolina, you just want him to take that next step, right? He talked about going to Alabama, going to Tennessee on official visits.
Yep.
Very quiet kid, doesn't really do the social media stuff a ton. I don't know if any of those visits have taken place since the Carolina official.
Yep.
I don't know if it's been pretty quiet, I think.
Very quiet.
But the reason I bring that up is always good to get him back from a Carolina perspective. And, Chris, you're in a situation where everybody's running out of opportunities to get kids on campus for games. The regular season is almost over. So, and signing day, the early signing period is, a month away. So it's getting close to being here. Any 2014 or 2024s that caught your attention?
Yeah. 2023s, we won't mention all of them because they do need to go to Gamecock Central to get the full list. I do want to tease one more.
Okay, give us one more.
All right. Reed McKeska, tight end, former Clemson commitment, now committed to Miami from Texas. A lot of layers there. There's a couple more really interesting 2023 kids too, so go check out the full list on GamecockCentral.com.
Yeah, Chris, Reed, a guy that has always been. I remember when I first interviewed him. I hope I'm not misquoting. I remember him saying I'm kind of an SEC guy.
Yeah.
And then he's committed to two ACC schools.
Yeah.
But he, I believe, did he grow up in North Carolina or has family in North? There's some ties out here
in the Carolinas.
Yeah, there's some ties out here. So that's. I think he, for whatever reason, has kind of just wanted to get out of Texas. It seems like that's what the results have been so far. But dare say Carolina has
very quietly
been involved.
That one will be interesting. And tight ends, they've kind of cast a wide net there, right?
Yes.
I mean, Nicholas Harbor's a guy who they are eyeing to play both sides, the 5-star, but he's one to watch. 2024s, man, there are a bunch of them. Guys they've had on campus, guys are getting on campus for the first time. Again, we won't give away all of them.
Any offensive linemen? Tell me that.
I would start with the O-line, especially in-state. There are multiple 2024 talented O-linemen, but the Twin Towers of Josiah Thompson from Dillon, Cam Pringle from Woodland, both those guys on campus. Dude, how about this one? Dylan Stewart, again, one of the top edge prospects in the country from Washington, D.C., Friendship Academy. This will be, I think, his 4th or 5th visit to South Carolina.
I was going to say 5.
I think it's 5.
That might be wrong, but I was going to say 5. And Chris actually called South Carolina his favorite.
Yeah, big time offer
this past week.
Yeah.
It was very recent. Called South Carolina his favorite. Speaking of people who have the Gamecocks as their favorite, is that the great Ryan Brewer over there? I believe.
I see a Ryan Brewer and Lou Antonelli.
Oh, the famous Lou Antonelli. It's a big Gamecock weekend when Lou rolls into town.
Exactly right.
Lots of folks out here at Steel Hands, and we're about to get out of here and go hang out and say hello and all that good stuff. Gamecock Bourbon Society, which, by the way, Chris, has absolutely blown up. Like, this thing has been impressive how they have taken an idea, a concept, and turned it into a group. What else we got, man? Neither one of us is picking Carolina.
Yep.
So there's no real point to drag that out. SEC Nation is on campus. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Shout out Michael Sauls, Gamecock Central's Michael Sauls, student as well at USC. He was on Paul Feinbaum earlier.
Yep.
That was cool.
Cool.
Tell me something else.
That's all I got, man. I have emptied the chamber. We have done our part. Oh, no, not the microphone over.
That's fine.
We've done our part.
We've done our part. I'm gonna go eat this burger. I think you're gonna go eat some oysters.
Yeah.
Probably gonna get some oysters too. If you're in the area, if you're already in town, come on out. Again, we're at Steel Hands in Casey. As always, Clint Hammond is our presenting sponsor. Shout out Clint. 803-771-6933. He is Chris. I am Wes. We're getting out of here, and we'll see you tomorrow.
What am I getting?